It is 1997. Hip-hop is in a state of post-traumatic stress. New York has lost Biggie. Los Angeles has lost Tupac. Two symbols, two ends of the country, and two open graves. While the giants were recovering from wounds that would never heal, one question hung in the air. What now? Who will take the throne? Most people were looking toward Jay-Z or Dr. Dre. No one seriously considered Atlanta, New Orleans, Memphis, or Houston. To the coastal elite, it was the provinces, a place where slow music was made for cars and hot nights. But while the coasts were fighting for pride and reputation, the South was fighting for survival, for food on the table and control over their own work. They took discarded technology, the Roland TR-808 drum machine, and turned its bass into the DNA of a new world. This music wasn't made for quiet listening. It was designed for cars with massive speakers, where the 808 bass had to physically move air to be considered good. They didn't ask for permission to enter the game. They bought the entire field. Today, we explore how the Third Coast became the center of the world, how Master P bought into the industry, why strip clubs became more important than radio, and the moment when a young duo on a stage in New York said a sentence that changed everything. We have to return to the very core of the Coastal War. The Source Awards, 1995. While Suge Knight and Puff Daddy were exchanging toxic looks and insults, something far more important for the future of music was happening. When it was announced that the award for Best New Group would go to OutKast, boos erupted through the hall. New York took it as an insult. Two guys from Georgia in the heart of hip-hop? But those boos weren't just arrogance. They were fear. Fear that the rules were changing and that someone else was writing the next chapter. Andre 3000 stepped in front of a hostile crowd and calmly delivered a prophecy. But the South got something to say. That's all I got to say. OutKast, with the support of the Dungeon Family Collective, didn't copy the East. They brought in funk, psychedelia, and a Southern accent. At the same time, Goody Mob was forging the term that would define the region, the Dirty South. The South stopped asking for approval and started building an empire. While OutKast was winning over critics, a man from New Orleans was conquering bank accounts. Master P. With $10,000 from an insurance payout, he opened a record store and learned a crucial lesson. Fans want constant material and a sense of belonging. His label, No Limit Records, became a factory. Albums were dropping almost every week. The famous pen and pixel covers looked like visual kitsch, but it was the dream of the poor South. Too much gold and diamonds, because they came from places where there was never enough. Inside every CD case was a coming soon catalog. As soon as you bought one album, you already wanted the next 5. But the real power move was the contract. Master P kept 80% of the profits and ownership of the masters. He wasn't fighting for the lyrical crown. He was fighting for complete control of the market. In 1998, Snoop Dogg was the biggest star of the West, but also a man in serious danger. Death Row was collapsing under the pressure of gangs in the courts. Then Master P did the unthinkable. He bought out Snoop's contract from Suge Knight. Snoop took off the blue bandana and put on the No Limit chain. For purists, it was a drop in quality, but for the industry, it was a passing of the torch. If the biggest star in California had to go south to be safe and get paid, then the center of power had officially shifted. The South was no longer a province. It had become a refuge. While No Limit ruled, an even bigger monster was being born in another part of New Orleans, Cash Money Records. 1998 brought an incredible $30 million deal between Cash Money and Universal. The moment corporate America officially recognized that the South was no longer a risk, but the safest investment on the planet. Birdman and Slim had a secret weapon, producer Manny Fresh. One man, one sound, an entire empire. Bling Bling entered the lexicon. and Lil Wayne stepped onto the scene. But the South never had just one center. It had multiple underground capitals. While others were chasing hits, the duo UGK in Texas was forging the country fried sound, blending street wisdom with deep soul, setting lyrical standards that would later define the whole region. In Houston, DJ Screw slowed down the music and created the chopped and screwed sound, which the world would copy decades later. In Memphis, 3-6 Mafia laid the foundations of trap with their dark, aggressive triplet flow. The South had learned what Biggie and Tupac realized too late. War costs. Collaboration brings profit. In the early 2000s, Atlanta became the Hollywood of the South. Ludacris was the bridge. Technically strong enough for New York, yet entertaining enough for radio. Then came T.I., crowned himself the king of the South, and trap was born. But trap didn't originate in the studio. It was born in strip clubs. In Atlanta, the DJ at Magic City held more power than any radio programmer. If the radio refused to play your song, the club would. And if the paying crowd was dancing, the industry had to listen. Atlanta created two directions: crunk, raw energy, and trap, a story of survival. The ultimate confirmation of dominance came in 2003, when OutKast won the Grammy for Album of the Year. The South no longer had something to say. The South was now leading the entire conversation. The rise of the South wasn't accidental. It was the result of decades of being ignored. While the coast clung to old rules about what real hip-hop was, the South invented new ones: independence, 808 bass, and complete ownership. Hip-hop was born in the poverty of New York. It grew up in the anger of Los Angeles. But it came of age in the South. The Coastal War ended tragically, but from its ashes, an empire was born, one that still rules every speaker on the planet today. A question for you: who do you think is the true uncrowned king of the South? OutKast, T.I., Lil Wayne, or someone from the new school? And do you think the South would have ever gotten this much space if Tupac and Biggie hadn't been lost in a war that no one had to fight? Write your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see you in the next story.